believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't know. That I don't know. That
why
I don't
not?
know.
And then candidate Donald Trump made those comments back in 2016. Establishment Republicans and anti-abortion activists rushed to explain that he was confused. Of course that wasn't their position.
But of course, women shouldn't be punished. I think probably Donald Trump will figure out a way to say that he didn't say it or he was misquoted or whatever, but I don't think so. I don't think that's an appropriate response.
Well, here we are 3 years later with President Trump in the Oval Office, two of his conservative nominees sitting on the Supreme Court, and members of his party in Georgia just enacted legislation that could do exactly as Trump said, punish a woman for having an abortion. Now, the formerly pro-choice Donald Trump is perhaps the most unlikely champion of the anti-abortion movement you could find in the entire country, and yet here he is on the precipice of having his court nominees achieve a decades-long goal of undoing Roe v. Wade. Joining me now to discuss what's happening with the Republican push to eliminate abortion rights, Laura Bassett, who's been covering it all as a journalist, and Caroline Fredrickson, president of the American Constitution Society, one of the nation's leading progressive legal organizations. Laura, let me start with you. Obviously, there's been so much activism and activity around this issue in Republican states attempting to whittle away at access. This seems a newer strategy and a more sort of frontal assault. Is that what you're seeing?
Absolutely. The wave of anti-abortion restrictions started in 2011 when the Tea Party swept the House after 2010. And so we've been seeing increasing amounts of abortion restrictions every year. And this year it appears to be the worst. The abortion laws are getting definitely a lot more extreme. We're seeing all-out abortion bans, or they might as well be. The one in Georgia and the one in Ohio might as well be these 6-week bans before most women even realize they're pregnant. And I think the reason Republicans are so emboldened now, because look, this heartbeat ban, Republicans have been trying to pass this for years. Kasich, a few years ago, actually, he vetoed it because he said it was too extreme. Now it's not too extreme for Republicans anymore because Donald Trump is president and there's a conservative Supreme Court, and they think this actually could get up there to the Supreme Court and overturn Roe.
So Caroline, my understanding of the legal jurisprudence under Roe is that obviously all these things like a 6-week ban or a comprehensive ban like Alabama are just flatly against the law. They're unconstitutional. They violate Roe. What happens what is the strategy they're pursuing in terms of the legal fight here?
Well, I think clearly they kind of mistook The Handmaid's Tale for a how-to manual, but what they're trying to do is land this directly at the Supreme Court. It's sort of they did used to kind of go around it and pretend that what they were doing was just reasonable limitations when they've always been aiming at the heart of Roe. Right now, they're coming out of the darkness and doing it in broad daylight and saying that that's what they're all about. They want to overturn Roe, and they want this Supreme Court with Donald Trump's nominees to do it for them.
But I guess the question, just in a more technical sense, and maybe this is boring, but I just there's a district court. It's going to go to a district court. Someone's going to sue. It's going to go to a district court judge who's going to strike it down, and then what happens?
Well, I mean, they go to an appellate court, which also has been stacked with right-wing judges by Donald Trump. And then it's on the express train to the Supreme Court. I mean, they've indicated, and we know that that's what Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Gorsuch, they're ready and waiting, and the rest of them, have been signaling, quite obviously that that's the direction that they want to go.
Laura, do you think there's, I think among women, particularly in women who are support abortion rights and active, there's a real tangible fear that we're standing at the precipice right now. Where are we to your mind?
I think women are terrified right now from what I'm seeing, especially over the past couple of weeks with the Georgia bill. The Georgia bill is unlike anything we've seen. And we're talking about a bill that defines abortion as murder. It would threaten women with up to life in prison or even capital punishment for an abortion. 10 years in prison for going out to a different state to have an abortion, and threatening women with jail time for even possibly a miscarriage. Now we've got an Ohio bill that's possibly banning the insurance coverage of birth control. I think women have gotten a bit complacent over the years and thinking, Roe v. Wade is set precedent. It was set in the 70s. And now they're seeing, this is serious. And we don't have a Supreme Court that's going to protect us. We might actually soon be put in jail for something that used to be a common healthcare procedure.
Caroline, what do you think about where the Supreme Court is on this and whether they would take a case on this, a full frontal just challenge to Roe, something like a comprehensive ban?
Well, you know, I mean, I think we might have thought differently until this term, but we've already seen the Supreme Court issuing some really, I think, quite radical decisions and moving in a direction that seems to contemplate going to Roe. I mean, people say that Chief Justice Roberts is very worried about the status of the court and it proceeds incrementally. But I don't think the others are there, and I'm not really sure that he's there. I mean, we've already seen that they've indicated indications that they're ready to undo a decision they issued just a couple of years ago, which found law unconstitutional for putting some real constraints on women's access to abortion. And I think it could happen any time.
And you only need 4 votes to take the case, and then the wrangling begins. Laura Bassett and Caroline Fredrickson, thank you both for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.